Monday this week, the story of power play at the highest level of government over who gets to control the Independent National Electoral Commission ahead of the 2023 general elections made the headlines. On the social media, the story generated quite a bit of interest. But in a world where competition among news headlines continues to get more intense by the day, this one might just have slipped through unnoticed. But there's a few who recognize the possible dangers of going into another electoral cycle with a largely compromised electoral body. When the news filtered through weeks ago about the appointment of a clearly partisan government official as the National Commissioner in the Electoral Commission, it only generated concern for a number of days, and that was it. So we'll be joined for a conversation by Chukwuma Ezeala, a lawyer on all this. Chukwuma, the conversation was simply about somebody, Loretta Onoche, that worked for the federal government as regards social media and digital media. And if you see her tweets, you will know where she really slants. And that person is to be put in the National Commission, somebody that has openly shown a very high degree of partisanship. I mean, what does this make for the integrity of our electoral body in the country?
Thank you for having me, and good morning. Now, I think it's part of the problems we are having as a country. And to think that within the period when the youths are asking that things be done properly, this is the time that we are making lots of mistakes. Lots of mistakes in the sense that we are looking for people of integrity. We're not talking about integrity as to whether the person is a very nice person, but people should be able to see that whoever that is being presented will look slightly unbiased. And when you look at the third schedule of the 1999 Constitution as amended, you will see that there is the need for the president to get the advice of the National Council of States. And that National Council of States are comprised of eminent personalities of unquestionable integrity. Now, these are people that are not partisan. You have the former presidents, you have the former chief justices of the Federation, you have the governors, you have the president of the Senate and the Speaker of the House. These are people that ought to advise the president. How the president decided to submit the name of somebody who not just a government appointee, but who has consistently shown her bias for a particular political party. It's not a question of being a card-carrying member of a party like some people will say, but it's a question of this person has shown by her conduct, by her utterances, by her tweets, by all she does, how she is completely for a particular political party. Now, what are we supposed to do? We were thinking that the president should have been thinking of getting some people who have proven themselves. Take, for instance, you have a lot of electoral commissioners who have done very, very well, who politicians themselves have said, yes, this man can be a good arbiter. Because that's all about what we are talking about. Take, for instance, the man that conducted the election in Sokoto in 2014, or rather in 2015, the man did very well. If you're looking for a national commissioner, you should look for such people because you should elevate him to pay him for the good job. And you have another person that did well also in Bini and also in Akwa Ibom. When you are looking for people you want to take, especially, you see, every region, every geopolitical zone have people that have been tested. And I think at this stage, it's important for not just the president doing the right thing, but it's also important that the past presidents should call Mr. President, because some of these things he may not necessarily know that this is where we are going. For instance, General Abdul Salami, who is chairman of a peace group, National Peace Commission, I think at this stage he should call Mr. President and say, please bring this to the National Council of State in case Mr. President has forgotten. Nobody knows it all. Nobody remembers it all. But not when the crisis starts. We now unleash the Peace Commission onto Nigerians. Let us be preemptive at this time. Let people of substance, let former Chief Justices of the Federation call Mr. President and remind Mr. President that at this crisis moment, the youth say they want a change of government and they will need somebody they can trust. They will need people they can trust and not people that already have vested interest. What we have in the social media and the other media is that you have a section of a political party, a section of a political party trying to get their own people into the Electoral Commission. We've never had this type of thing here. We've never had this type of thing in other countries. The countries we have had it from, they have a particular way they are going. And we have seen the crisis in those countries. Today in America, they are having problem with their elections, but not on the basis of a biased political management body, but on the basis of some issues that made, and you see how they trust the system. We must allow Nigerians to trust the system by looking at those that are qualified. The Constitution made specific provision and said that the president shall appoint people of unquestionable character. It is very clear. And that the president must seek the advice of the National Council of State. So I enjoin the president, I plead with the president in the interest of Nigeria to seek that advice and to respect that advice. He may not be bound by the advice, but he should seek, even before submitting the name of the chairman of the commission. We didn't hear that National Council of State sat. So we think National Council of State should sit and look at the nominations, because the truth is that any lawyer, any political party can go to court and insist that the provisions of the Constitution be complied with. If somebody loses an election and decides to challenge that election on that basis, don't you think, I think the election can be invalidated on that account. Thank you.
Well, Chukwuma, with due respect, I think we need to make the point very clear that the Council of State is not a supervisory body, it's an advisory body. And I do not think that the president is duty-bound to consult the Council of State on every appointment. He has powers under the Constitution to hire and fire whoever he deems fit, except in those other provisions where he needs to pay attention to federal character. And with regard to appointment of commissioners to Inec, of course, that will go to the National Assembly. And the National Assembly has the oversight role. If he nominated Loretta Onochie, the onus is on the National Assembly, the Senate, to say, no, we don't want this person. And then that, I don't think, is something we need to worry terribly about. But I guess the position of the INEC chairman is even far more important. Professor Yakubu Mahmoud's tenure has ended. He has been reappointed by the president. We're waiting for the Senate to take a position on that. But how will you assess Professor Yakubu Mahmoud's first tenure, if I may use that phrase, as the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission in terms of the leadership that he has provided and the performance of INEC under his watch?
Thank you, but please permit me to also look at what you earlier said. When the Constitution says you act on the advice, it's important you get that advice. You're not bound by that advice.
Not at all.
So for us to think we throw away that provision of the Constitution and say, oh, it's only advice, therefore the president is not bound to seek that advice, I think is not the right thing in a state or in a country that wants to move forward. Now, looking at the chairman of the commission being nominated, who has been there for 4 years, if we look at his tenure, we will not say it is the best of the tenures we've had. Most of the elections that were conducted were also shrouded in controversy. Apart from maybe the two last ones, the rest had their own issues. Some of them were inconclusive at a time. He may say that is not his own function in terms of when you have violence. But then, he needed to do something to show, to account to Nigerians the way he had conducted that election. But that's what I think the Senate will do when they will screen him. I know that the president of the Senate is a highly intelligent and lettered person. And I know also we have eminent personalities in the Senate. I assume that the Senate will ask him questions on what happened in the previous elections and whether what we have seen in the last 2 elections would be the benchmark. How will he improve on it? And are there things he has done to improve on it? So these are the questions I think he should be asked. But my own view would have been, let the president also look at the commissioners themselves, national commissioners themselves, the electoral commissioners themselves. Is there one who has proven himself to have done his own elections in a way that Nigerians are appreciated? This is an area I think we should go. It's very important we get it right. It's very important. Let me give you an example. In 2005, I was in the delegation to Ghanaian election. The then chairman of the Electoral Commission of Ghana, what did he do? He was a classmate to the 2 presidential aspirants. But all of them knew about his integrity. In fact, he was a roommate to one of them. But all of them knew about his integrity. And Ghanaians, if you go to the streets of Ghana, they will tell you that the chairman of the Electoral Commission was a man of integrity. They trust him. And this is the type of thing we are looking at. When Professor Jega was appointed, people recommended to the then president that Professor Jega was a vice chancellor. These were the things he did. He did very well as a vice chancellor, and he was appointed. He wasn't appointed by a clique in the presidency, but based on what he had done. So I think this time around, we should be looking at appointments based on what you have done before, based on integrity, and all the things prescribed in the Constitution. Remember that they said why the Constitution asked the president to seek the advice of the National Council of State is because the Senate that is going to approve is also partisan. So the Constitution looked at those areas, and knowing that relatively the Council of State is not so much partisan, at least some of them can freely give an advice or give an authentic advice that the president should take. And in the interest of security, in the interest of the unity of the country, and in the interest of progress of the country, the president should not just throw away the advice or refuse to go to an advice, insisting that he's not bound to seek that advice. I think that should be our take. And we should be hammering on this so that Nigeria will get it right. The NSAS people, if they knew they can get it right by voting out people who cannot do well, why would they not take that chance? But the problem is that they believe that the system has been so skewed in favor of people that are in charge of the system, in charge of the country, that they can't do much. So let's all plan how to make Nigeria a better place by getting to the spirit and letters of the Constitution. Thank you.
Indeed, but I just also have to say, you mentioned earlier that the youth wanted a change of government. That would be treason. I believe that the youth wanted an end to police brutality. I just need to, clarify that position. So what you're saying in a nutshell is that you don't see Mahmoud Yakubu as being the second in Nigerian history to oversee 2 general elections like Dr. Atahiru Jega did. Is that the professor? Thank you. Thanks. Atahiru Jega. Is that it in a nutshell? And what is your take on the future of our electoral management body?
My take on the future of the electoral management body is that it can be better. The previous appointments made to the national commissioners were okay. Bringing people like Bamuche, people like Fabian Okoye, people knew them to be people that you can trust. They had no partisan interest. The issue of integrity was not there. And many members of that National Electoral Commission. Now, bringing in division into the National Electoral Body is also causing a bit more problem. Now, on the issue of the chairman of the Electoral Commission, I have not said that I have anything personal against him. I have not said he has not tried his best. That is not what I am saying. But what I am saying at this time is the president may have to look a bit more. The president may have to think more of the unity of Nigeria. And when we say the unity of Nigeria, if somebody is scoring 60%, for instance, we should be looking for whether there are people that are scoring 80%. What I mean by scoring is the area you have managed, have you done well? Have you done very well to the satisfaction of as many people as possible? That's what I am looking at. Then the having Prof, breaking the jinx is one thing. Jega, I think Professor Jega himself said he wasn't ready, from my understanding, to go for the second tenure. But he did relatively well in the 2 elections he conducted. He was there for 5 years and not 10 years. The current chairman has been there for 5 years and seeking for another 5 years, which will make it 10 years. I don't have any problem if he's able to convince the Senate. If the National Council of State, who may have more information than myself, deem him fit to continue in office. But I think the president should not throw away the advice of National Council. And remember that the National Council of State, in all the functions that were given to them, was advisory. So if we don't need that advice, we better scrape that aspect of the Constitution. If we think that nobody should go to them for advice, then we should scrap that part of the Constitution. So let's not say it's advisory. Therefore, nobody should go for their advice. Advice means they advise you, you decide to take or you decide not to take. You may decide not to take at your own peril. But we must work towards a system that all of us will be happy with the commission, all of us will trust the commission, all of us will be able to say, oh, the commission will do what the majority of Nigerians want.
For me, from what I can deduce from what you said, it's still pretty much driven by who is the person in charge of the helms of affairs of the commission. The person must be seen as having integrity. Somebody will say, okay, Professor Atari Jega was seen as that kind of person. In the case of Ghana, you cited too, yes, the man of integrity. But I want to get to a point in Africa where we're going to have electoral commissions that we don't care who is the head of the electoral commission, but we just know the electoral commission will serve us well and will do its work with integrity. A case in point is I don't even know who's the head of the Electoral College in America, but I know they hold elections, and those elections are judged to be fair and fair. How can we get to a point where our electoral institutions are truly independent and are strong and are viable?
All we need to do is, for instance, the president is not seeking for a second tenure. So this is a great opportunity for him to look at Nigerians, like I have mentioned, the idea of we have in the system already. We have people who have distinguished themselves, whether as national commissioners or as resident electoral commissioners in the states. The DSS have information on all of them. Nigerians from those states know how they have performed. So once the president takes that information from the DSS, takes that information from the National Security Advisor's Office, he should be able to know this is what I'm going to do. There was this rumor that somebody was about to be appointed the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission sometime. And when the president at that time realized that he had headed another body and that he didn't do well, whether rightly or wrongly, that he didn't do well there, the president refused to appoint him. It was a rumor. So this time around, you check somebody who has worked for 5 years. You score based on what the person has done, based on the controversies you have seen around the system, based on how he has managed every other aspect. The chairman has done well with his team. I'm not saying he has not done well with his team. So what I am only saying is, are there people that have done better within his team? It's even important for us to always choose a chairman from among those that are in the system, whether the person is the current or was the current chairman, or whether the person is was a national officer or is a national officer, or whether the person is a resident electoral commissioner before. We should be able to choose. But the one we should not wish away is appointing, whether chairman, national officer, or resident electoral commissioner, from amongst very active politicians. No, how do you explain it? How do you explain the fact that you go and get somebody from Abga, an Abga chieftain, and make the person chairman of the Electoral Commission, or make the person a national commissioner, or make the person even a resident electoral commissioner. How do you explain it? You see, Caesar's wife must rise above suspicion. We must all rise above suspicion. Because when there is a suspicion, just like in appointment of a judge, for instance, the arbitrators, when you appoint an arbitrator who is going to preside over a dispute, the fact of him being related, or the fact of him having shown one interest or the other to any of the parties, is enough to ground the rule of bias and neutrality. Let's look for people who are relatively neutral. Really, I'm not saying nobody, maybe you may say that nobody is neutral. So let's begin to search for a new nation. The country is already full. That is, I mean, the resilience of the people cannot really be taken for granted, and we need to hit it very hard. My sister Onochie should really not be appointed, and if appointed, I think she should say no. We must all work on integrity. She may be a nice woman, that's not the issue, but the issue is she should not be appointed to the Electoral Commission. She can be made chairman of NNPC, she can be made chairperson of any other body, any NIMASA, any other executive body. No, that's very good. She's competent. But in the eyes of the people, she should not be. What you ought to do at that time is to look at her zone. Look at resident electoral commissioners that are from the zone. Did they do well? Any of them that has done well, you pick the person the same way from every other zone. I think we should have a system of having the electoral commissioner, resident electoral commissioners elevated to national commissioners when there is vacancy in the national office, so that you will encourage people to work harder. You will encourage people to supervise better. You will encourage people, and then people from outside, Nigerians will now see that we are really in the process of nation building. I believe that if people are listening, especially former presidents, they should take this up. The current Senate president should look at it and also advise the president on who to send.
Chukwuma, let's move quickly beyond some of these issues, and let's make the point that the president is the chairman of the Council of State. He calls the meeting when he thinks it is necessary. But let's talk about electoral reform as Nigeria prepares for the 2023 general elections. And the Senate president, whom you quoted earlier, was talking about focusing on relevant amendments. What kind of reform would you like to see so that in 2023 we can have general elections that Nigerians can be proud of?
Yes, thank you. We'll be looking at reforms that, one, will enable Nigerians to vote seamlessly. And what do I mean by that? We should be looking at reforms that can also activate as we move on. First is, for a long time now, we've been talking about electronic voting. Have we started seeing real-time voting? So real-time voting, once we complete our votes, the results are sent. That should be the key aspect of the electoral reform. And also in the electoral reform, in which I think they should also touch the issue of appointment. The issue of appointment. The issue of appointment is very important in our electoral reforms. Who do you appoint? The laws that are there for us, are they okay for us? Are they the things we should then? We should also be looking at what roles should people play in terms of the elections, in terms of the management. What should be the role of Inec? Like my brother said, he said that the chairman of the Electoral Commission in America, nobody knows him. There is already a system, and that's what we are talking about, a system being set in place. When you set a system in place, so the electoral reforms should be in such a way that you set a system. You have people that are moving up on account of their competence, on account of their integrity, on account of what they haven't seen to be doing. There's nothing wrong in saying, maybe in the electoral reforms, to say, oh, look, even if the president is appointed, he must take 1, 2, 3 into consideration, not just the bogus thing of saying a person of questionable integrity. I also know that the National Assembly cannot legislate where the Constitution has made adequate provision for. We will be looking at seeing where, after the elections, what will be the role of the observers? The observers that have participated, that have seen it all, what will the courts do with the reports from the observers? So we need to know how can we restore the integrity of the electoral process. And I think part of the ways to restore the integrity of the electoral process is also to say that independent observers, whatever they have seen, whatever is their report, should be taken into consideration. I'm not saying that whatever they say will be final, but I'm saying that the way Inec takes into consideration the reports of the security agencies should also be given to independent organized observers. And punishment of violators, punishment of crime within the election area, within the election circuits. We do not have enough implemented. Not that we don't have good laws on election. The next problem is how do we also ensure that we enforce the laws that we have? The laws that we have are things that we should also look at the enforcement, and that's okay for us.
About electoral offenses. And on that note, we would like to thank you very much, Chukwuma Ezeala, for joining us on the morning show.